Good morning. We'll do a little bit of a drive and be vulnerable session. I told myself and I promised myself that I would continue these vulnerable vlogs. I do think that it's helpful for me to just talk about whatever's on my mind, what I've been learning, what I've been seeing, what I've been feeling, and what I've come to understand. And I think what was really interesting from the last conversation in Korea was around, reframing a lot of my relationship with time, understanding that if I can reframe things, it'll help provide a space and a point of view that relates specifically towards me and takes into consideration everything that I have been working towards, and just trying to be authentic in that sense, right? Like, it's okay to not only be a super likable person. It's okay not to be likable, right? It's okay that people may not see you for how you want them to see. Because at the end of the day, I tell this to my class at SVA, which I'm teaching a portfolio class. I'm basically teaching them to look in the mirror and to truly see and accept themselves, because when it comes time to walk these streets, be in a space that's shared by others, it benefits to know that the self-confidence that has been built up by loving who we are is almost indefensible, right? Like, no one can really attack you in that way because you understand how to protect yourself in that way. And I've had all these thoughts, and I think one of the thoughts, or I guess lessons of today, right? A conversation sparked about this idea of manifestation. Oh, Ian, it seems to me that, everything you have been wanting to manifest, it's starting to happen. And it made me really think about how in my past I have always just allowed myself to be curious, right? Curious about the fact that I would love to travel for work. Curious at the fact that I would love to do work where I get to be embedded in the research, right? Be there in person. Manifest in the sense that I have always been curious about my social lifestyle, going out, going to festivals, going to parties, seeing different musicians, partying with friends. I've always wanted to know what it felt like to be able to go to a club and buy a table and just not care. And there's the other spectrum of just living in another country, living in another city. I've always lived in LA most of my life, and a lot of great friends that I've met were either originally from LA or were from overseas or from another city in the States. And in my mind, I always looked at those friends and I was like, wow, so courageous. How courageous is it that you're able to leave your home, pursue your passion and your career, and build a life? Because for me, it's always been a little bit hard. Obviously, there's, family and friends and all these other things. But going back to this theme about manifestation, I've been thinking about why it feels like I'm capable of manifesting a lot of the things that I truly seek out in life. And the only thing I can think of right now, and this could be a theme, a lesson, a pattern that I'm seeing, but the only thing I can think of right now is that I just don't try to force things. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it's just not the right time and place for it. I do think that manifestation has a time and a place. They always talk about, opportunities. Sometimes they're lucky, sometimes they're calculated. And I think manifestation can be in that same realm. I think manifesting the things that you want. So, I think my life has always been built on the curiosity of being okay to change my direction at a moment's notice. Meaning that, if travel opportunities come, should I take it? Sure. If it's not something that I feel right about, then I won't. And I think what sometimes I hear with this idea of manifestation is, how can we do it now? Or how can we do it more in the immediate time? And I think that's where people struggle, because I generally believe that when you manifest it, it means you're ready. It means that you've taken the time to do whatever it is that you need to do, right? Work on yourself, be committed to the things in your life, whether it's a work, family, place, things, strangers, whatever it might be. Because I generally believe as we manifest and the opportunities come, deep down our gut will tell us that this is the time and the place. And so I always feel like, people talk about, oh, Ian, relationships. Oh, Ian, like you're such a good guy, right? And that's fair. And I appreciate that I have amazing people and friends that are around me. And they're always kind of like looking at me because, to be honest, like I have been single for maybe 4 years. And a lot of it, to be honest, was choice. There might have been moments where I was a little bit, like I felt alone and I didn't want to be alone. But then deep down, it's like, is that the right time to actually pursue relationships and things like that? Versus pursuing a relationship when I myself have committed to myself, invested in myself, helped myself to grow immensely, so that if I am with someone else, I have the time and the space to fully give them my attention. And if I can't do that, honestly, like I just don't feel like going through. Now that I'm not opposed to like dating people and doing that more frequently, right? But I think the moment I feel like it's more commitment, it doesn't mean long term, but just like this idea that the attention that I give, the energy I give, the time and the space that I give is more than I would give like an average friend. That's when like I have to really kind of think about like, oh shit, like, am I ready? Am I capable? Am I prepared? Am I just living the now, right? I always talk about being present. I always talk about wanting to be, the best version of myself. And if I want to be the best version of myself, then I want to manifest that. Then it's okay for me to be vulnerable, right? It's okay for me to show people that things will never always go my way, right? And it's not about things going your way or their way or whoever's way. I just think it's something where it's okay to accept that your path may have bumps. I think it's what provides character. It's what makes us stronger. It's why we wake up in the day. Like it offers these like challenges and ways for us to feel human at the end of the day. Like I wanted to do this type of vulnerable series driving. It reminds me of a time when I was younger, driving through the streets of LA, listening to music, and just feeling. And the beauty of LA to me, obviously I've lived here and grown up here, is I understand that the spaces that I'm driving through, the textures of the city, it's almost like I get to explore myself, because this is my city. This is how I grew up. This is what catered to my growth. And it's humbling to be able to like drive the different streets, to go through and see the diversity and the people that are here that to me feel like home. And I think sometimes we always kind of overcomplicate and try to overthink. And one of the things that I will say, and I do appreciate that it has become a little bit more clear to me in my life as I've started to grow and learn more about myself, is this idea of patterns versus potential. And I talked about this in the other video. I was on the plane, and I think this is funny, like how you see your own growth. And maybe this is something that people can do, I don't know. But one of my favorite movies is Midnight in Paris. And there's a romanticism with the narrative, but it plays off of this idea that we feel like we need to be somewhere else, right? Whether it's a different time period, a different city, a different place. And what was beautiful about that movie was to see it back then and to see it now. So back then when I watched it, and this is like, again, before like all of my traumas, before I moved to Australia, before I moved to New York, all this stuff. Back then when I watched that movie, I was one of those hopeless romantic types, right? And I still am to some degree. But what was really cool is, you know, back then you would watch it and you're like, oh my God, would it be like romantic? Like how cool would it be to live in Paris in the 20s? Like I was fully for it. People ask me like, today, like if there was a time period that I would want to live in, I genuinely wanted to live in the 20s, right? And so it resonated with me to see Paris and to see, you know, the language and the energy and the culture and the authenticity of that time. And you romanticize it. And so, you know, that's easily how it became one of my favorite movies, was because, I mean, not only the dialogue, but just his need to identify what draws him to feel, to be driven, to be himself, right? Like he was in a relationship where, you know, he didn't truly feel like he was himself. And I generally know that through my past relationships and moving forward that I don't want to not feel like myself. I want to make sure that I can feel 100% in my own skin, whatever that might be, and accept myself. And so it was just interesting to watch, because now that I see it, and this is what, over 4 years later, having reminded myself to like live in the present and to do all these different things. What's interesting is seeing it now, I caught this message that sometimes we're so focused on the romanticization. That word sucks. But we focus on romanticizing a lot of scenarios in our thoughts. And I think that resonated with me because it now goes back to this idea of patterns versus potential. And, you know, if I think about manifestation, I usually, through my life, have manifested things through the patterns of what I've seen and experienced and have been able to like select for myself, not by the potential. And it's interesting because we get so addicted to the potential, because the potential is, you know, it's not tangible. It has a lot of ephemeral emotions tied to it. Like you get a lot of these points in which you imagine a different reality. And it goes back to my learnings where I saw myself grow, and one of my other favorite movies was 500 Days of Summer. And I remember this very clearly, like when I watched it, I was totally on the guy's side. I was like, man, this girl doesn't know what she's talking about, all this shit. And then, you know, 4 or 5 years later, after like working on myself, I watched it, I was like, damn, this guy's a fool. Because he's like, what's beautiful about that movie is this idea of expectations versus reality. And in my mind, that's patterns versus potential, where your expectations is the potential and the reality is the patterns. It's what you see, it's what you feel. And it had a great scene where he had all these expectations, but the reality wasn't matching up to it. And it totally got to him. And it's almost like you become a victim, and you are unable or unequipped to be able to do the things that you want to do. And thus, you may not be able to manifest it, or think that you are unable to have the power to manifest. And my whole point is, you know, feel the energy, feel your gut, because the patterns are there. And sometimes you have to make sure that you identify the reality that you're living in. Feel yourself, see yourself, hear yourself, smell yourself, you know, taste yourself, whatever it is. Like, be present. And if there's anything I've learned with, you know, Midnight in Paris, was this idea that we could always romanticize of something else, but we can always bring that back into our present, right? Identify the patterns in which you could develop the romanticization of your life in the present. Because it's your life, it's what you're living. It's one of the most important things, just to, be your authentic self right here, right now, in this moment, right? Like, unless we build like a time machine or something like that, at this moment in time, our reality is built off of the present. And then going back to the patterns and the potential around realities and expectation, like, it was really cool to see my growth of having new points of view, and it was never tarnished in terms of like the points of view that I had back then, whether they contradicted each other or not. That was still me at the end of the day. I accept all versions of me as I've grown to who I am today. And so to close out through this vulnerable drive, I guess we could call this, I know that my life will never always have what I would want holistically. There's a lot of things that I want, with relationships, friendships, intimacy, you know what I mean, work passions, creative passions, all this stuff. There's a lot that I want. But the reality is that not everyone follows the same pace. I've noticed that a lot of people in my life are built on different rhythms, and that's okay. And I think that's where, if you learn about patterns, right? Understand your pattern, understand your rhythm, understand your flow. Because at the end of the day, you will have other people that will match those patterns and that rhythm and that flow. And that's exciting. I don't know the time, I don't know the place. They always talk about how there's this like strive for you to be in your 20s and to know what you want, to be a millionaire right away. But then people talk about like some of the people that have grown to earn and to be deemed successful in their lives usually hit it in their 40s and 50s. And so I always wonder, like, why are we rushing, right? Why do we put ourselves and expose ourselves at the risk of, unidentified potential or expectations, rather than understanding the beauty of the patterns in reality that can actually lead you to a potential fruitful manifestation of what it is that you feel that you want to have for yourself. And so I'm thankful at the end of the day. I'm thankful that I'm here. I'm thankful I get to drive my car. Everyone, this is my GTI, this is Zoe. I'm thankful that I get to move back home. I was able to have dinner with my mom yesterday. This morning, it was a beautiful day in LA, and I'm driving by the ocean just to go to work. Like, if I look at the patterns of my life, there's nothing to be shameful about. I'm very lucky, and I'm very thankful about it. And if, things like wanting affection and dating and all that stuff isn't as immediate, I'll manifest that I am ready to, be serious or whatever, find a partner, whoever she is, or whatever, right? Like, but I told myself that the commitment to do so and the pattern to do so is built off of my self-confidence. And my self-confidence is built off of identifying patterns and potential, making sure that my gut feels good about the decisions that I'm making, that my gut feels good about the people that I'm around, and to be open, transparent, authentic. Have fruitful conversations. There's nothing shameful about wanting definition in your life. So that's me. I'm almost at work. The sun is bright, you can see it. And thank you. Have a good one.